Hold on, I gotta say something because somebody just commented on something. When I did a video a week or so ago, or 2 weeks ago, about the presidential candidates, a lot of people really misunderstood what the hell I was talking about. Somebody just commented about me being pro-life. What does that mean? That means that I think that abortion is an entirely irresponsible means of birth control. I have known people who have gone out and had a half a dozen abortions, plan in advance to have sex, and then plan in advance to go get an abortion when they get pregnant. That is ridiculous. I do not endorse that. I endorse a real system of Planned Parenthood. I do not encourage anybody to criminalize abortion. I understand that there is a need for it. I understand that there are many needs for it. Our presidential candidates, including Ron Paul, want to make this illegal for any sort of application, including stem cell research. I am not in support of that. I'm disturbed at how badly that video was misrepresented. I was criticized for not criticizing Obama when I did, and other people criticized me for criticizing Obama too much. And it's the same video. People are like picking and choosing and not understanding. I'm done.
Welcome to the world of political videos.
Yes,
Aaron,
well,
I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain.
We won't go down that route now. That opens up another kind of worms. We'll move on to the next caller, who I hope is with us. Hello.
Hi.
Matty.
Thanks for having me on. I just wanted to ask a question to Dave. I'm sorry to get this back out again, but before you said that you know that there's no God, and you compared this to how you know there's no Santa Claus. And I know there's no Santa Claus because the presents don't magically appear under the tree. And I'm an atheist, and I don't think that there's a God, but how do you completely deny the possibility?
I completely deny the possibility. The word that you use, completely deny the possibility. That is a relative statement. Okay. And that's what we have to, that's what we keep getting pushed back on. How do you completely deny the possibility that Santa Claus isn't just ignoring your house? It is possible that Santa Claus is just ignoring you, Maddie. It is possible that Santa Claus does live at the North Pole. You've never been to the North Pole, I'm willing to wager. You've never scoured the North Pole personally. You just read about it, but you say that you know there's no Santa Claus because there are no presents. Well, that doesn't prove that there's no Santa Claus. That just proves that Santa Claus doesn't like you very much. In reality,
or that you've been naughty in the year.
It's an invisible, transcendental Santa Claus.
My point is that when you get that's right, you can't. And when you get to the point of saying,
David, I think that's the gist of the question. If you can't prove it doesn't, how can you say that you know it doesn't?
Because how do we know anything? What is the word no? What does the word no mean? How can we say we know there's no Santa Claus, but not we know there's no God?
I'll tell you how you do it. I'll tell you how you do it. You do it like this. There is evidently no Santa Claus. There is evidently no God. When they want to argue that point,
you know nothing.
They can cough up the evidence.
But then you know nothing, Aaron. I mean, what do you know? Let me ask you something. Let me push this back to you. What do you know?
You cannot prove a negative. But until that claim is substantiated, it may as well not exist. In science, there is only what is supported and what is not supported, and Santa Claus, leprechauns, and God are not supported. Cough up the evidence, and then they will be worthy of conversation. But until you have evidence, there's no point in discussing it. It isn't worthy of merit.
And I completely agree with you on that, Aaron. I think that the whole concept of whether or not we know there is no God or whether we don't know that there isn't a God or whether that's all a waste of time. We're all atheists, and we should just move on with it and not get stuck in this little rut, because that's what this rut will do. This is a conversation that talks more about philosophy than it does about knowledge. And what we have to get past is, okay, you know what? We're all atheists. Everybody here is an atheist. When God shows himself, we'll convert or we'll change or whatever, and we'll be convinced that wrong. The same thing can be said for Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. If you don't like the fact that we're using no, well, then you should never use the word no in your life, because you don't know there's no God any less then you don't know that there's no Santa Claus. So you must not know anything. You just must evidently think this due to the preponderance of the evidence. If that's your definition, that's fine. But now we've lost a word from our definition. We've lost a word from our vocabulary. And
I would love to add something to that. I saw a sermon where one of the local Texas preachers, and I have this in one of my videos, talking about how atheists gather together and they have these conventions, and why are they so upset about God if they don't believe in him? And he goes on to say, I don't believe in Santa Claus, and I don't believe in an Easter bunny, and I don't believe in a tooth fairy, and yet I'm not out trying to ruin anybody's day over it. And to me, that was an enormously substantive statement, because it means that he acknowledges that his God is, in fact, in the same category,
right,
as those other three things. And it is just as much imaginary as those other three things. But in reality, I know somebody else, a Texas preacher, who told me, when in my own conversion experience into rebirth in Christianity, and I asked him, how do I know that this elation, this feeling of spiritual revival that I feel, how do I know that this is really Jesus? And he grabbed me by both shoulders and he said, just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until you believe it. And that, to me, was more of a confession that he fully knows, and I think they all fully know, it is pretend.
Yes.
They know that what they believe is not really true.
Amen. I completely with you.
Thunder.
Just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until the confirmational bias kicks in.
That's right.
But I mean, this is something we touched upon on the last show. Why is it that it seems to be a part of the human condition, certainly for a lot of people, that they have this necessity?
Well, that's because it allows people to stop believing in death. That's what religion does. It allows people to not believe in death. Death is the number one thing, that all living beings, all sentient living beings fear. It is the number one fear. It's on everybody's mind all the time. But if you are a theist, you don't believe in death. You believe the body dies, but the soul goes on and lives forever, for better or worse. So it allows people to not believe in death, and that is why people believe. It gives them such comfort because it takes away our most basic instinctive fear.
I certainly think that that's one of the reasons. I don't think it's necessarily the only one. But whilst we're sort of like getting slightly diverted, let me divert it a little bit further, if I may. I was talking to someone recently about how one responds to the question that is sometimes posed by theists. Namely, how can you have purpose in your life if you don't believe in God? Now, I could go on for a long time about this, but you're our special guest. How would you respond to that? I'm sure you've been asked it before.
Well, it's exactly the same as you would have purpose in your life if you do believe in God. You make your own purpose. You decide what your own purpose is. Everybody does, without exception. And the only difference is that people who have a belief absolve themselves of the responsibility for making that decision by giving that blame, giving that credit to to their God, when in reality it's them. So, how do atheists live moral lives? How do you have a purpose? How do you face a tragedy? Well, it's exactly the same way for all people. The only difference is that atheists take credit and theists give the credit away. It's the exact same mechanism.
So let's go back to the caller because we moved.
I would go one step further than that.
For a change.
I wouldn't say that necessarily that atheists take credit. That may not be the best way to phrase that, but I will give credit to Christopher Hitchens for not backing out and making up excuses and trying to diffuse himself, to delude himself into believing that the imminent end of his life was not forthcoming, and that there's a lot of people like myself when I don't want to go into it, but there are moments when you face your own death, when you're certain that you're going to die in a moment. And the thoughts that, and this has happened to me 3 times, the thoughts that go through my mind are always invariably not about magic invisible beings and where I'm going to spend eternity in this imaginary place. They are always about how will my children and my family fare if I don't survive this. That's what it is.
Can I throw in my tuppence worth on this? I'm sorry, so we're going to go back to the caller. I do not fear being dead at all. That has no fear for me at all. In fact, an eternal afterlife for me is terrifying. Even if I was in this concept of heaven, as opposed to being burnt forever in hell, even heaven would be intolerable. An eternity, never being able to leave it, would be awful. The only thing that scares me about dying is the manner in which I'm going to die and whether it's going to be particularly painful and unpleasant. But being dead is of no concern.
That's the other thing I want to throw out there. You know, the Christians always talk about that they will never taste the taste of death if you have Jesus with you. And you know what? Being dead isn't the problem. It's lying on the floor, clutching your chest, trying to breathe. That's the problem. And your religion ain't saving me from that.
Matty, back to you.
Thanks. So yeah, I really agree with you on that. I wouldn't want to be in heaven. I just wanted to make clear what I said before, though. I don't think that Christianity or Islam will ever exist because it's all absurd in my eyes. But I was just trying to make the point that you shouldn't rule out that there is something because we just can't know. It's not possible for us to.
I mean, the way I look at it is there are an enormous amount of things that we can't know, probably won't know. As David mentioned earlier on, the God of the gaps, though, is getting much smaller as our scientific understanding and knowledge increases. But I think that, unfortunately, I'm somewhat pessimistic in this regard. I do think that there is an aspect of human nature such that religion is unlikely to ever disappear. I think that it's, for whatever reasons, as I say, it's something we touched upon on the last show.
Yeah, when DPR Jones says that he's a bit pessimistic, he's not adequately underscoring this. He was on stage, sharing the stage with Richard Dawkins, and when it became his time to speak, you know, about what to do about our situation in the world market, you know, how to you know, promoting atheism, and he basically gave a speech saying it's hopeless. There's nothing we can do. It's a lost cause.
Well, remember, this shouldn't be our objective. We should not have as our objective, and this is something that I hope everybody understands. We should not have as our objective the elimination of religion, because it's not what we want. What we want is freedom of thought, and a symptom of freedom of thought is going to be disagreement. So we don't want the elimination of religion. What we want is the permeation of freedom of thought, of free thought and logical thought. And we want equality for atheists in America, no matter how they define themselves. So we need to focus ourselves as a movement on not being out there to destroy religion. Religion is going to destroy itself, and it's all about us. It's not about them. And the other thing that we need to concentrate on is not getting into the atheist versus agnostic argument, not getting into the epistemological argument. That just divides us. We need to focus on the prize, which is equality for people like us in this country. Get the point across that atheists are here, and not only are we here, we are relevant and important and already everywhere. That's what we need to worry about. It's not about whether or not we know that there is no God or whether or anything like that. And it's not about eliminating religion. That should not be part of it. It's all about equality and relevance in American society. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing.
David, if I could just mention two things. Firstly, if it appeared that I offloaded Matty in a very rude way, I did send him a message saying that I had to do it because we've got what will be, I suspect, our last caller. David, we're 3 minutes before we should end. Are you happy to overrun by 10 minutes or so?